If I was to tell you that today I could teach you a technique that you're able to teach back confidently in any salon, would you be interested? And what if I told you that that technique creates a completely seamless color melt result with a 100% ammonia-free color by L'Oreal Professional called INOA? Would you give it a try? Great. Well, you are in the right place. And I thank you for joining me today. As a new regional educator, I believe it's really important to feel empowered when we walk into our salons. So, with that, I'd like to show you what it's like to create a benchmark mannequin. So, here we have a benchmark of the actual technique that I'll be teaching today, which is a color melt with a NOA. As you can see, it's a color melt with a slightly deeper base, and then it gradually goes into a lighter shade with a ton of shine and dimension all in one step utilizing a NOA color. Not only did I utilize a NOA color, but I used Metal Detox prior to. So I would love to talk to you about the products that I recommend using when it comes to at-home care, as well as to achieve this beautiful blowout that we have here today on our Ellie mannequin. First products I used once the color was finished was one of our star products. This is Siri Expert's Vitamino Color 10-in-1 spray. This is a wonderful product, especially when it comes to somebody who doesn't like a lot of product, due to the fact that you get 10-in-1 benefits out of the one product itself. A few of those benefits are things such as a heat protectant up to 450 degrees. It helps to ease your detangling, and it also helps to protect your color, hence why this is what I started with after my color service. This product is best applied onto towel dried or damp hair, and it can also be used as a cutting lotion for anybody looking to detangle a little bit more prior to a haircut. Following the 10-in-1 spray, I used the Metal Detox Blow Dry Cream. I actually use this to continue the home care since we did a metal detox treatment prior to actually doing the color. And this is actually a heat protectant up to 450 degrees, as well as a blow dry cream, which is going to help to ease that blowout and provide a ton of shine, but at the same time, provide a little bit more of that glycamine so that the metals aren't re-penetrating back into the hair. And this product, again, is best applied onto towel dried hair, following anything else you would like to use for styling. So from there, I go into some of my favorite styling products. One of my favorite products is actually called Techniart Densité. And this product has been around for quite some time. As you can see, it's a spray, and we consider it to be a thickening primer. With that, it also likes to be applied into towel dried hair. So I'll typically, after using my treatment products or whatever I need to use to detangle, then I'll start with Densité just to build anything else on the top for the style that I'm looking to create. So if you think about like makeup, when we think about a makeup primer, typically you would apply that first and then the makeup and it would last all day. Well, it's a very similar concept to hair, and Densité allows that to happen. So any product we put over the top will actually perform a little bit better. So once I've prepped the hair with Densité, I like to go in with one of my favorite products, and it has been one of my favorite products since it was launched. This is actually Next Day Hair by Techniart. And what's so nice about Next Day Hair is it can be used wet to dry. So it's actually considered to be a dry texturizing spray or a dry finishing spray. But with that, you can actually apply it into dry hair, or like I did today for our benchmark mannequin, apply it into damp hair prior to your blowout for just a little bit of extra volume or memory hold that you're looking for if you're planning on doing a round brush. So this is Next Day Hair. And again, Next Day Hair, I just sprayed throughout the damp hair. And then I went in with my new favorite tool. My new favorite tool by L'Oreal Professional is actually the Airlight Pro, launching October 1st. You may have seen a lot about it on social media. We are the only brand with a tool as such, but what this is a brand new blow dryer that actually works off of infrared technology, causing no damage whatsoever with your blowouts. You'll notice reduced blow dry time, a ton more shine, and no damage. And again, we are one of the only brands with technology like this. This blow dryer has 17 blades and a very, very high speed, allowing it to get you those results faster than probably anything you've used before and still maintain control for a beautiful style. So again, this is the Airlight Pro by L'Oreal Professional, launching October 1st. This is our new blow dryer. So what I really like to showcase about that is just the ability of what a nice blow dryer you're able to get from just one tool. All I used was my round brush, utilizing L'Oreal Professional's professional products, and I was able to create all of this volume without any heat tools. One of the other things I really like using Next Day Hair for, since I mentioned you can use it wet or dry, is to go back in and spray it into your curls or into the hair that you've recently blown out or cut. And this actually, you can see, allows you to create a little bit more texture and a little bit more volume within that hair. So it's a great way to share with your stylist or your clients the multi-uses that you can use with just the one product. Because again, here we believe in working smarter, not harder. And for somebody who doesn't like to use a ton of product, Next Day Hair works when it comes to wet or dry. And again, it is one of my favorites. I definitely recommend. So I hope you enjoyed checking out the benchmark. Let's go ahead and get into our technique. Again, we're going to be doing a color melt with INOA. As you can see, I'm not sure how the lighting is for you, but we have a deeper root here, but it gradually goes into a much softer color towards the end seamlessly without creating any kind of hard lines. And it looks like it's a little root shadow, but it's very, very soft when it comes to the final look of the actual hair. And it's extremely easy to achieve. So here you can see if she was to pull her hair back, you can see we have a little bit more depth, but yet there's no hard lines. So let's go ahead and get into our color melting technique with INOA. Okay, so before we begin the actual technique on the live mannequin and we do the demo, I just wanted to go over a quick flip chart that I've prepped to make sure that everything is completely understood before we actually get into the hands-on, in case there's not very good visibility. So here what we're doing is actually going to be a color melt utilizing INOA. This here is representing the section of hair. And these are the two different formulas we're working with. So you can see the first formula that we're applying at the actual base of the hair globally as our root shadow or color melt is actually going to be a 445 in INOA. So it's a level 4 primary tone copper, secondary tone red violet. And this is L'Oreal Professional INOA 4.45. We're going to apply that about 2.5 inches, kind of staggered with our application, and I'll explain as we're doing it why. And then when we're done with that, we're actually going to go back in with one of my favorite tools, which is a roller brush. I just want to show you the tools up front so everybody's on the same page. The roller ball brush actually really helps to blend the two colors, creating a third color seamlessly in this actual technique. So we're going to go ahead and consider this to be our blending zone or our roller brush zone. That's where we're going to be dragging down formula number 1. And then we'll go in with formula number 2, which is a 7.44, a level 7 primary tone copper, secondary tone copper. So you can tell we're intensifying that copper there. And we're going to actually melt those colors together seamlessly. And the way that we're going to do that is I'm actually going to be switching my developers. So before we get started, I am going to go ahead and put my gloves on and we will be able to begin. The one thing that I did was I actually utilized a 20 volume at the base so that we got a little bit of a deeper deposit. And then I used a 30 volume for that blending zone mid shaft and ends to make sure that we got a little bit more pop out of that actual level 7 copper since we are doing a color melt. So by doing that, we're able to see a seamless blend between the few shades, but as you can tell, a level 4 to a level 7 is actually 3 levels apart. So anytime we're working with a root shadow, it's always nice, or a color melt, to make sure that our colors are compatible, our tones are compatible, and that we're also working within 2 to 3 levels if we want that color to blend seamlessly. If we're working with anything more than that, it gives you a harder line, making it a little bit harder to give you that seamless result and create that third shade out of the actual 2. So you can see I have my mannequin already sectioned off for me. I've also already prepped her with Metal Detox, but in case Metal Detox is something that you are not familiar doing a demo with, I would just like to show you how quick and easy it is to demo prior to any color service. So with that, what we're gonna do is just move that out of the way to be safe. Is actually spray it through the hair prior to actually doing the color. So you can see I have my gloves on. The best practice is actually to stay 6 inches away from the mannequin itself or the actual client and spray away from the face. So we want to make sure we're spraying the surface and then gradually kind of dragging down the Metal Detox spray. And again, Metal Detox is a pre-color spray. It's a treatment that's compatible for all color brands, but it has to be applied at the time of consultation. So for this application, I would probably do about 3 sprays off to the side. And you don't need to oversaturate because there's 30 to 36 applications in one bottle. So we want to really make sure that we're getting the most out of it and we're able to actually sell those treatments and earn a little bit more money. So less is more. So I've got 3 sprays after the first of my tea part. Now I'll go over to my second section. I'll probably do 1 spray, 2 sprays, 3, and if it's a little longer or we've got lighter ends, 4. And typically a full head would be about 10 sprays overall. I would do 3 on the side, 3 on the opposite side of the tea parting, and then I would do about 4 in the back. At that point, we are ready for color. So I'm gonna go ahead and resection my actual mannequin to make sure that she's ready for the application. And considering I'm going to be starting in the front, naturally I'm going to be combing through the hair. So we'll go ahead and just comb through the hair right now, just to spread that detox through the hair. And now we're going to go ahead and mix up our color. So we are working with INOA, which is actually a 1-to-1 mixing ratio, which makes it really easy when it comes to formulating. So here I have a INOA measuring cup. L'Oreal Professional is really great at creating tools for you to pre-measure your products in. So I'm going to go ahead and mix up both colors now to save us time. That way I'm able to actually go out and to create that color melt with the 2 shades at one time and not having to stop to remix color at all. So here you can see this is already labeled. So for our first formula, we're going to do 1 application, which would end up being 1 tube. And with that, I'm going to use the 20 volume for the base color. So I'm going to go ahead and apply it or distribute it up to the 1 application, which would be 1 full tube, which is actually 2.1 ounces or 60 grams. And we want to make sure that we have that at eye level. That way we're using the appropriate amount of developer, especially if we're not using a scale, because the slightest difference can change the results. So it's really important to be consistent with what we're using. And then again, I'm going to use my L'Oreal Professional Color Key. It's best practice to use the tools that we have available. And I'm going to slide that into my color tube. But in order to do so, we first want to flip up the actual color tube, slide in the color key, and then we're going to actually fold it down at that point. Again, our base color is going to be a 4.45. So we'll go ahead and distribute that into the cup. And then it's really important to make sure that we thoroughly mix our color. So in order to do so, I'm going to be using another one of our tools by L'Oreal Professional, which I feel is really important when we're working with an ammonia-free product that doesn't contain ammonia, but is working with MEA instead. So this is actually our mixing tool or our spatula. I'm going to go ahead and mix up the color with this, but the reason that it's so important to use this tool is due to the fact that sometimes color can stick around the sidewalls. So I'm not sure if you're able to see with the lighting, but sometimes you'll start to see color develop, and it may not be thoroughly mixed in, and you'll start to notice little white spots of the developer. So just make sure anytime we're working with the color to give it a really good sweep around to make sure it's all thoroughly mixed. So this would be shade number 1, and this is 4.45 in INOA. The second shade we're going to mix up, I'm going to actually utilize the L'Oreal Color Shaker. And what's nice about this is this actually has measurements for INOA on one side, since it's a 1-to-1 mixing ratio. And then it also has a measurement for Majorelle and Dia on the opposite side, since it's a 1 to 1.5 mixing ratio. So depending on what you're looking for, you have your perfect measuring cup for any formulation you're looking to create. The other thing that I really love about this is exactly what I'm doing right now. Best practice is to be able to actually add in your color and developer, put the lid back on it, and we consider this to be housing color. Because no oxygen is able to get in right now, oxidizing the color itself, I'm able to keep it here until I'm ready to mix it up. So I'd say my average retouch is about 15 minutes. After the 15-minute global retouch has been done, I already have my next shade ready to pull through mid-lengths and ends. So this is a really great way to work with two different shades, but also have them ready. And then one more thing to point out, now that the color has slightly developed, you can see what I was referencing in the beginning, and it happens pretty quick. But notice how there's a little bit of separation still between my color and my developer. This is where we want to really make sure that we get in there using the spatula prior to dipping in our color brush, and we mix that color together. If we don't do that, it can cause a little bit of slight scalp irritation due to the fact that the MEA is not mixed into the color, and that is what's actually looking to develop and give us that coverage. So just make sure that we're giving it a really thorough sweep, and then you're ready to actually apply the color, and you can utilize your L'Oreal Professional Color Brush with it once it's mixed perfectly. So now we'll move on to our second shade. Again, our second shade is going to be 7.44 in INOA, and I'm utilizing a 30 volume. The reason I'm switching developers here is because a 30 volume is going to give us a little bit more lift, and it's going to enhance the brightness in that mid-length and ends. So I'm going to do a full tube of 7.44, filling up the developer to 2.1 ounces again, 60 grams. And then we're going to dispense a full tube in here, but this time I'm not going to mix it up until I'm actually ready to use it. So we'll flip up that tab again, slide in the color key, and then mix in the actual color, or just deposit it into a color shaker until we're ready to use it. So I'm going to go ahead and just put it in here without mixing it up. And then I will just put the lid on until we're actually ready to use it. And you can see it stays nice and separated and housed until we're actually ready to mix it up with the spatula and use the second shade. So now we're going to go ahead and begin our application. So with INOA, because it is ammonia free, we want to make sure that we're actually saturating the hair and applying enough product, especially if we're looking for that gray coverage. So the first thing I'm going to do for this color melt scenario is I'm going to outline my T section, my T parting. So I'm going to go ahead and just go through with about an inch of product and just outline it. That way, no matter what, I know that I've got the hairline covered. A lot of times that's where the hair may be a little bit more resistant. And because we're working with an ammonia-free product, we want to make sure that we are able to give it the coverage it's looking for if we're looking for 100% coverage. But if not, we want to make sure the color's even. So this is a great way to cross-check your work, but to make sure it's even. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to start on the first quadrant off to the side. And one of my favorite things when working with INOA is actually the way that we work with INOA. It's a really, really, really clean application. And here you can see I've outlined it about an inch. But now I'm going to start in with this actual section here. So let me change my body positioning. What we're going to do is we're going to take a 1/4 inch. It used to be about 1/8 of an inch, but since we've gone vegan and removed the beeswax, you can now take a little bit of a larger section, but we still want to make sure we're focusing on saturation. So I'm going to go ahead and just paint the bottom side, holding the hair in my hand. That way I'm not dragging any of this color melt or root shadow color through the ends. So I'm going to make sure that I always hold those ends in my hand, taking a clean parting, and I'm going to do a push and sweep method. So I'm going to push it, and I'm going to sweep it down. And right now I'm going about a full inch, 1.25 inches. I'll then drop my next section. Again, I'm kind of just staggering it, so just kind of painting it down to where I applied the selection below, but not dragging out the color too much because again, we are going to be doing a color melt. So we want to make sure that we have enough product at the base, knowing that we're going to go back through with the roller brush and actually drag it out a little bit more or stagger it down a little bit more. So you can see I'm making sure I pick up enough product every single time. And when I apply, I do what we like to call a push and sweep. So I'm going right above the line of demarcation or the actual section I've created, and I'm sweeping it down onto the line of demarcation or exactly how far I want to drag out that root. Again, always working with about an 1/8 to a 1/4 section, so pretty small sections, making sure my brush is always nicely saturated, pushing and sweeping down. And you can see just how easy and how clean this retouch ends up looking. Another reason why we really enjoy doing benchmark mannequins with INOA Color is because anytime we're showcasing something, we want to make sure that the actual mannequin's head, if we're doing mannequin work, looks clean and doesn't look stained. So with INOA hair color, we're actually able to go back with a damp towel and just wipe off that color so that there's no staining and our final results look really nice. There's nothing worse than a beautiful color created on a mannequin, but then a completely stained forehead just due to how bright it might be. So to avoid that, work with a INOA, and because it's oil-based, you can nicely just clean it up when you're done. The other reason I like doing the push and sweep is because I know it's a foolproof application. So you can always see when I've push and swept that there's a little bit of product that kind of oozes from the last section I did since I'm painting from the bottom to the top. And the reason, again, I'm doing it this way is to maintain full control so that I don't pull through any color on those ends that we want to have a lighter result or a brighter result due to the fact that the technique is a color melt. So at this point, I've applied the actual first base color here. This is where now I would go in with a towel, a damp towel, and I would just use the corner of it and just kind of wipe off the mannequin to make sure we don't have any staining. And again, this is a level 4, so we want to make sure that we get it sooner than later. Now I'm actually ready to use the roller brush and start the actual color melt. So here, the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go back to where I started towards the bottom, just loosely open up my section, and I'm going to actually roll the color down with the brush. So starting where I applied it, pressing a little bit of pressure against the head and scooping out. So if you can see, my movement is like this with the brush going into the head and scooping out. That's allowing it to drag down just a little bit more. That way, when we go back in with our second shade, we've staggered the root shadow or the color melt just a little bit. So it's broken up that line that we may have created. And that's also why I said I like to go about 1 inch to about 2.5 inches, depending on how much I'm dragging out the color. At this point, this is where we would go back in now with our second shade. So I'm going to put the hair back into original position. I'm going to grab our pre-mixed color, and we are going to make sure that we mix this one up really, really well. Again, because it's been housed, you can see the separation between the developer and the color. You can tell once it's thoroughly mixed up. So INOA is a really, really beautiful color to work with because it makes it really easy for you to see what you're doing. And again, you can also work with 2 different shades like we're doing now without any foil or easy mesh because the color adheres pretty well once it's been applied, which is making it really easy for you to go back in and apply your second shade. So now our second shade is 7.44. Since I've used a roller brush to actually stagger the color, I'm going to go directly in with my next shade, applying it with the brush right where it looks like the line stopped. And I'm going to use my hand as my planchette to paint this color through. Making sure I'm using enough pressure and I'm picking up enough color each section that I drop down. Going back in, taking another about 1/8 of an inch, painting it into my hand versus holding the prior section. If you do that, sometimes it absorbs the color from the section below. Again, we're working with oil-based ammonia-free, so we want to make sure that we're really able to coat that hair and get the proper saturation. So I'm not really pulling it through with my hand. You can see I'm using it kind of as my planchette and just working it down as I go. And we'll go back. And working with diagonal back sections, I think, makes it a little bit easier when you are going back through that root shadow. Again, application right where that roller ball melt, right where we want that color to melt. That's where we're going to bring the colors together to meet. And what's nice is while INOA starts to develop, you can actually see the difference between the shades. So I can see exactly how drawn out my color melt is actually looking. So I can make sure it's not too much. It's just what I'm looking for. One thing you will notice with INOA that is also important to point out is due to the fact that it does have oil-based technology, it does tend to look a little bit darker as it's processing, but have no fear. If you've chosen the right desired shade, those are the results that you should be getting. And we've got about 2 more sections here again. If you work with smaller sections, you don't have to question the coverage that you got, especially if you're doing a tint back or a major color change. So we want to make sure, again, one of the biggest keys to working with INOA color is making sure that the stylists have proper saturation and that we're using enough product every time and not removing it, because unlike traditional hair color, it's not going to be swelling due to the fact that it doesn't contain any ammonia. And because I used the roller brush in between, I know that it dragged down a little bit more of that level 4 into where I'm applying my level 7. So this is where the colors kind of tend to melt together and will give me that beautiful, almost third color without looking like an intentional third color. So here we can see now that the color's been pulled through. I'm gonna go ahead and wipe her face off one more time. But you can actually see how nice with INOA the color sits to the actual head. And then the difference, which is going to be very similar to the results we're getting with the actual root smudge or color melt, whatever you like to call it. So it's visually pleasing when you're working with INOA for a demo as well. So I want to thank you for your time today. I hope that this is something that you were able to teach back and feel confident doing. As you can see, it's a super, super simple technique. Doesn't require too much, no foils, no balayage pieces, but you're able to get such a beautiful result with dimension seamlessly with the seamless color melt with INOA. Thank you for joining me. I look forward to seeing you next time.